I've got a little, well, not so much a review, but a sort of discussion I thought was worth bringing up.
Okay.
So a couple of weeks ago, I saw the film Breakfast at Tiffany's, which is sort of considered a classic from the
Yeah.
'60s. But so here's the interesting thing. So it's based on a Truman Capote novel. It's set in sort of like New York in the '60s, and sort of these socialites living up in this sort of the New York life. But underneath they have their own personal problems, and it's not all great in the
Yeah.
most broadest sense. But so basically, as far as I can understand, in the original sort of novel or play, I think it was rather, the main two characters sort of they're supposed to be like sort of cool girls, or well, one's a cool girl, one's a cool boy. Would it be?
The cool boy.
I don't know. A gigolo, whatever. Either way, they're sort of but there's clearly so in the film as well, there's this sort of this clear hint that they're both sort of in some way trading their company for money.
Yeah.
But this film came out in 1961, and it's this really interesting thing where it's the story itself is full of these sort of like darker, more adult subject matters, and yet the film is coming out of Hollywood where censorship's still a big thing, and it's just doesn't have the sort of the wiggle room censor-wise to talk about its stuff in any great detail.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting case. Like, so for example, there's a sort of there's a subplot involving sort of cocaine smuggling, which is sort of brought up in the film briefly, and then at the end it's like, oh, and she's been arrested for smuggling this cocaine, and then it's sort of like, oh, but she's been let off. It's all cool. Oh, what was happening with that? Oh no, it doesn't matter. She's fine. She's gone. Oh, okay then. So that was fine. Yeah, don't worry about it. It's cool. And like again, it's like there's this clear indication they're supposed to be sex workers, and it's like, oh no, it's she just gets paid by these men and they just hang out together. I'm like, okay, sure. And also, and the ending of it, there's this whole thing in the cab where it's like, because essentially it's a romance between Audrey Hepburn and this other guy who's they live in the same apartment.
Wait, is she a cool girl?
Yeah, that's the implication. But she's
The
sort of
implication.
she's sort of like this sort of high class sort of socialite in a way. She's very much sort of she projects this sort of outward personality of being this sort of great with people and a party person and all about this fun sort of free life. But in reality, she's quite damaged on the inside. I mean I haven't read Great Gatsby, but it feels like what I think The Great Gatsby is about.
Okay. Right.
I don't know. If
Sure. I mean, that sounds sort of vaguely similar.
It sounds similar. I haven't read it, so I can't say. But
Great Gatsby's quite good.
yeah.
Film's alright.
What, the Baz Luhrmann one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Surprisingly.
I mean, I haven't seen it, but I hate Baz Luhrmann with a passion. So
Yeah.
anyway, so Breakfast at Tiffany's. So it's a romance between these two, and it's sort of a bit of on and off again throughout the film. In the end, they're in a taxi together, and the guy's like, "You belong to me. You can't," because she's trying to flee the city. Like, you can't go because you belong to me. You're supposed to be mine. And she hits back with this great line, just like, "No one belongs to anyone. We're all free to do whatever we want." I was like, okay, that's a really interesting sentiment, especially for the era, when it's like the beginning of the second wave of feminism. It's like the idea of like, you don't belong to a man. You can do what you want. You can be who you want and be with who you want, and that's fine. And then she storms out the taxi, and he sort of follows her, and then they make out in the rain. And it's like, oh, what happened to not being yours? What happened to being free? So it's this really interesting thing again, where it's like, oh, we're trying to do something a little more daring for the era, film-wise, but because it's like we've got to pull a Hollywood ending out of this, what clearly hasn't got a Hollywood ending in it. So it just the message of the film is introduced, and then randomly just like, and Chuck Val aside and kiss. But it's really interesting at the point of history it is. So for some context, a year before, 1960, Psycho came out and was controversial not for any of the murder really, but because there was a shot of a toilet being flushed on screen.
Really?
Yeah, which caused great controversy because it's a toilets are private. We can't show that. It's obscene. It's not for polite viewing. Even though it's not anyone going to the toilet, someone flushing. I believe it's money down the toilet. It's been a while, but it's not. They're not using the toilet like that. It's just they flush the toilet. But that was controversial.
Amazing how times have changed, eh?
Yeah, but then consider 1969 Midnight Cowboy, a film expressly about a male gigolo in New York. which was also, it was X-rated, but it was certainly nominated for Oscars. I think it won Best Picture, but citation needed. I believe that's correct though. But consider that's only 8 years later, and that film was very openly and explicitly about male prostitution. So Breakfast at Tiffany's is in this really weird location in history because this is the right of a tail end of sort of the decline of Hollywood and the rise of things like French New Wave, which would then sort of reinvigorate Hollywood, begin to counter-culturalism in the late 60s, early 70s. But like, and you can even see it in the film with this sort of this whole socialite angle. Like, there's this party scene quite early on, which is full of these sort of very absurd party guests and sort of strange, almost quite comedic sort of moments happening with these characters in a way that feels very reminiscent of something like Jean-Luc Godard in that sort of very absurdist French comedy. Like, you can see the influence of Nouvelle Vague starting to seep in at the edges. But this film is just sort of weirdly positioned where it's still a story about that in 5 years' time would have been fine on screen, but is just in the sort of the fronds of censorship where it can't express itself properly. It's just a very fascinating film to watch, to see it sort of struggle against its own context in history, really.